What happens when one of Hollywood's toughest icons sits down for what's supposed to be a friendly interview and realizes the host across from him isn't there to talk, but to take him apart piece by piece and seems determined to tear him down? In a matter of minutes, polite smiles turn into open hostility as Joy Behar goes from interviewer to instigator, pushing Sylvester Stallone to a breaking point no one's ever seen before. What follows isn't just an argument. It's a full-blown confrontation where decades of pride, pain, and persistence collide on live television. And when Stallone finally fires back, he doesn't just defend his legacy, he dismantles hers. And trust me, this talk show won't disappoint you. It'll be worth every second of your time. The show starts like any other segment on The View. The cameras roll, the lights hit the table, and Joy Behar flashes that familiar TV smile. Across from her, Sylvester Stallone sits with his hands clasped, posture straight, calm, respectful, the same quiet intensity that's followed him for decades. His voice, low and rough like gravel on concrete, carries a kind of weight that doesn't need volume. Joy starts gently, pretending it's just another light chat. "Sly, you've done it all," she says, the corners of her mouth lifting just enough to look sincere. "But at your age, don't you ever think it's time to stop playing the hero?" The room tightens just a little. Stallone doesn't flinch. He gives a small, knowing smile, the kind that comes from years of taking hits and staying upright. "Heroes don't retire, Joy," he says evenly. "They just change the fight." There's a pause, just long enough for her to smirk. The charm in Joy's tone starts to crack. "Maybe the fight is over, though," she says, crossing one leg over the other. "The last few movies? Not exactly Rocky numbers, right?" It's a soft punch, but it lands. Stallone keeps his calm, answering like a man who's heard worse. "You know, numbers fade," he says quietly. "Stories don't." His tone isn't defensive, it's grounded, almost philosophical. But Joy doesn't like that answer. She leans forward, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Or maybe ego doesn't fade either," she says, her voice colder now, testing him, daring him to take the bait. For a brief moment, Stallone just studies her. You can see the shift, the stillness of a fighter measuring his opponent before the first round. Then he chuckles under his breath, more out of disbelief than amusement. "Ego?" he says. "Nah, I just like telling stories about people who don't quit. Guess that still bothers some folks. It's light, but the undertone isn't." Joy catches it. Her smile fades a little, replaced by something sharper, meaner. The air changes, no more polite banter, no more surface-level compliments. The friendly talk show tone evaporates, replaced by something that feels more like a challenge. Joy leans back in her chair, pretending to scan her notes like she's still doing her job, but her tone changes, sharp, teasing, almost cruel. "Let's be honest, Sly," she says. "Creed worked because of Michael B. Jordan. You were there for nostalgia, a legacy prop to make people clap." Her words sound polite enough, but the venom underneath is unmistakable. The sentence lands like a sucker punch. Stallone tilts his head, the corner of his mouth twitching in disbelief. He gives a short, low laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. "That's funny," he says. "Nostalgia doesn't win Oscars." His voice is calm, but it's the calm that comes before a storm. Joy smirks, sensing his restraint and pushing harder. "No," she says, "but clinging to relevance gets applause, for a while. Then people move on. Maybe it's time you did too." She looks at him like she's doing him a favor, like she's diagnosing a patient too stubborn to admit the end. Stallone blinks once, slow and deliberate. The air between them gets heavy. "You know," he says finally, "I've heard worse, from critics, from studios, from people who bet against me. But I've never heard anyone confuse staying relevant with refusing to quit." Joy taps her pen against the desk, voice rising just a little. "You call it refusing to quit? I call it refusing to let go. There's a difference, Sly. Maybe you just don't see it." Her tone turns mocking, baiting him. You've been doing this same story for 40 years. The underdog, the fighter, the same speech about never giving up. Don't you ever get tired of repeating yourself? Stallone leans forward now, elbows on the table, voice low and steady. You think that story's tired? Try living it. The silence after that feels like a slow burn. Joy smirks, refusing to back down. You make it sound noble, but maybe it's just fear. Fear of fading out. Fear of not being needed anymore. That's when the shift happens. Stallone's expression hardens, not angry yet, but colder, sharper. Fear's what keeps people quiet, he says slowly. And I've never been quiet. Joy laughs, a dry, humorless sound. No, you've never been quiet. You've just been loud enough to drown out everyone else. Now he's staring straight through her. Loud gets attention, he says, but lasting earns respect. And that's something you might not understand, Joy. Her eyes flash, and she fires back without hesitation. Oh, I understand plenty. I understand men like you who think their glory days give them a lifetime pass. You don't like being challenged because deep down, you know the world's moved on. He doesn't even blink. You don't challenge, Joy. You provoke. And the difference is, a challenge earns respect. Provocation earns a response. Her smirk fades just slightly, but she forces a laugh. So this is your big response? The tough guy routine? Stallone shakes his head. No, tough guys hit back. I'm just telling you, careful how far you push. Some people fight because they like it. I fight because I have to. Joy doesn't have a comeback. She looks down at her notes, pretending to read, but it's clear. The balance of power just shifted. The tension is thick, the silence deafening. Joy sits back, arms folded, her tone sharper now, no pretense of friendliness left. Hollywood's full of men who don't know when to let go, she says, each word clipped and deliberate. You're part of that club, Sly, guys who just can't accept that their time's up. Her smirk is thin and mean, and the air between them tightens. Stallone doesn't move. He studies her for a long second, then lets out a small breath through his nose, his gravel voice coming out low and steady. Yeah? He says. And Hollywood's full of critics who mistake bitterness for insight. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't flinch, but there's an edge now, a warning hidden behind the calm. Joy laughs, but it's a laugh with no warmth, just noise to fill the silence. Don't flatter yourself, Sly, she says. You've been dining off the same role for 40 years. Rocky, Rambo, Rocky again, same guy, different title. Stallone gives her a slow smirk, one that's more cutting than his words. And you've been dining off insulting people for 20, he replies quietly. Guess we both found what pays the bills. The audience can feel it. Something sharp just shifted. Joy freezes for half a heartbeat, thrown off by how quick and clean the blow lands. Her smile falters, but she hides it behind another dismissive laugh, trying to pull control back. Maybe you just can't handle being questioned anymore, she says, trying to sound casual but overcompensating with every syllable. That's what happens when men your age... Stallone doesn't let her finish. His voice slices through hers, low and cold. Finish that sentence carefully. The line stops her mid-breath. For the first time, Joy's grin tightens. Not playful now, but nervous, almost calculating. She knows she's crossed into dangerous territory, but refuses to show it. She takes a beat, then leans forward with a faint smile that feels more like a provocation than confidence. Start mistaking respect for pity, she says softly. Stallone goes still. The smirk is gone, his expression unreadable. He doesn't blink, doesn't speak. His jaw tightens slightly as if every word she just said sank deeper than she realizes. That silence stretches long enough for everyone to feel it. Not the kind that ends a conversation, but the kind that warns one's about to begin. Behind those quiet seconds, something in him shifts, years of restraint hardening into something colder, heavier. Stallone leans forward, his voice dropping low, the calm stripped away. "You want to talk about pity?" he says, each word slow, deliberate, and heavy. "I wrote Rocky when no one believed in me. I sold my dog to survive. I slept in a cheap apartment waiting for someone to take a chance on me. I bled for that story, Joy. I lived it. And now you sit here acting like I owe the world an apology for still fighting." His tone isn't angry yet. It's worse than that. It's steady, wounded, and dangerous. Joy raises her eyebrows, trying to sound unbothered. "You think that gives you a free pass forever?" she fires back. The sarcasm barely masks the tremor in her voice. Stallone's eyes flash. He slams his hand down on the table, not out of rage, but finality. The sound echoes through the space, cutting through her voice like a shot. "No," he says firmly. "It gives me the right not to be dismissed by someone who's never had to fight for anything but airtime." The tension is suffocating. Joy freezes for half a second, her lips parting, but no words come out. He doesn't look away, doesn't soften. The line between movie legend and man is gone. This isn't an actor defending a role, it's a fighter defending his entire life. She recovers, barely. "You're overreacting," she begins, but Stallone cuts her off mid-sentence, his voice sharp, unyielding. "No," he says, leaning forward again. "I'm reacting. To arrogance disguised as journalism, to people who preach empowerment but mock those who earned it, to folks who act like tearing someone down makes them righteous." His stare doesn't move, his voice rising just enough to fill the air. "You don't interview, Joy. You ambush." The silence that follows is immediate and absolute. Joy's face stiffens, her eyes darting, searching for something to say, but there's nothing left. His words hang in the air, not shouted, not exaggerated, just brutally, uncomfortably true. Every syllable lands with the kind of finality that ends conversations and careers. It's not a meltdown. It's a man reclaiming his ground after being pushed too far. And for the first time all morning, Joy Behar has nothing to say. Stallone sits there for a long moment, his breathing steady, but his eyes still burning. Then, slowly, he stands. The chair creaks behind him, the only sound cutting through the thick silence. "You think age makes me weaker," he says, his voice steady, quieter now, but carrying more weight than when he shouted. "It made me sharper. You call it ego, I call it endurance." Every word lands like a closing statement in a trial he never wanted but had to win. Joy looks up at him, her confidence finally cracked. Her voice is a whisper now, almost defensive. "Are you done?" He stares down at her for a long second, the corner of his jaw tightening. Then he shakes his head slightly, not in anger, in certainty. "No, Joy," he says, his tone final. "You are." He reaches up, unclipping his mic with slow, deliberate precision. No drama, no rush, just a quiet man reclaiming his dignity. The calm that follows isn't peace. It's the calm after an explosion, when the smoke is still hanging in the air and no one dares to move. He turns to the camera, his voice soft but resolute. "To anyone watching," he says, "don't ever apologize for lasting longer than the people who doubted you." He pauses, not for effect, but for meaning. If you're still standing, you've already won. And with that, he sets the mic down on the table and walks away. No music, no applause, no polite wrap-up from the hosts, just the sound of his footsteps fading as the screen holds on Joy's stunned face, the moment she realizes she didn't just lose an argument. She lost control of her own show. For a long beat, there's nothing but silence. Not the awkward kind, the kind that lingers after truth has been spoken too plainly to ignore. Stallone doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. What started as another morning interview ended with something else entirely, a reckoning. A man walking off not in defeat, but with every ounce of respect he came in with, multiplied by the courage it took to walk away. Within hours, clips of the confrontation explode online. The moment he stood, the calm in his voice, that final line, "You call it ego, I call it endurance," becomes the most replayed soundbite of the week. It spreads across platforms like wildfire. Twitter threads dissect every word, Instagram reels cut it to slow motion, and talk shows replay it under headlines like, "The Day Stallone Snapped Back." But the tone isn't ridicule, it's respect. People don't see a meltdown, they see a man drawing a line. Fans flood the comments, quoting him like scripture. "You think age makes me weaker, it made me sharper. Don't apologize for lasting longer than they did." Those words hit something deeper than gossip. They become a mantra for actors, athletes, anyone who's ever been told their time was up. Even critics who once mocked him start admitting it. The moment wasn't about ego, it was about dignity. By the next morning, every outlet from Entertainment Weekly to The Guardian runs the story. Some call it the most uncomfortable interview of the year. Others call it a masterclass in self-respect. But the fans know better. They see the truth behind the outburst, a lifetime of struggle condensed into a single, unfiltered moment. And that final clip, Stallone turning to the camera, calm, unapologetic, lingers long after the episode fades from the airwaves. In an industry obsessed with reinvention, his message cuts through louder than any PR campaign ever could. It becomes legend, a reminder that sometimes in Hollywood, the fight isn't for fame, followers, or validation. Sometimes the fight is simply for respect. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss another explosive moment from television's most unpredictable talk shows. Thanks for watching, and trust me, the next one will hit even harder.